From the earliest days of his career, Gökberk Demirci has spoken quietly yet confidently about the figures who shaped his outlook, the personalities whose presence made him think differently, act differently, and aim higher. These aren't simply role models in the superficial sense. They're people whose values resonated with him, whose humanity spoke louder than their fame or success. Understanding who they are helps us understand who Gökberk aims to become. One name he has referenced more than once is Anthony Hopkins. In a magazine interview, he said, "Even the lift of his eyebrow, the moment of silence between his words, I watched it with awe." GarderUpMagazine.com +1 What draws Gökberk to Hopkins is not simply his status as a legendary actor, but the subtlety of his craft, the weight in his pauses, the honesty in his quiet. Gökberk admires how Hopkins doesn't fill the space with noise. He uses what's unsaid to speak volumes. In his own acting, Gökberk strives for that economy of emotion. He wants moments where the audience feels something without being told exactly what to feel. Beyond craft, Gökberk also admires personality traits. He once told a publication, "In life, the biggest inspiration for me is the moment you stop chasing applause and start chasing authenticity." GarderUpMagazine.com +1. For him, authenticity means being the same person in public and in private. Many of the personalities he respects are marked not just by their achievements, but by their grounded presence, their humility, their commitment to something deeper than fame. This is precisely why his list of favorite personalities isn't a glitzy list of celebrities. It's more about human qualities. Another recurring figure in Gökberk's reflections is the elder family member, his grandfather. According to biographical sources, his grandfather had a large antique collection, object of history, objects of patience. Filmic Gökberk often says that these antiques taught him a lesson: value age, value story, value preservation. When asked what inspired him, he once said, "My grandfather's objects taught me to wait, to understand that things of value are not always new. They often carry years of quiet." The personality he admires here isn't a public figure. It's someone who watched time, gathered memories, and allowed life to enrich rather than rush. In the same vein, Gökberk also speaks of athletes and sports figures, not as mere performers, but as teachers of discipline and resilience. He has said that he would have liked to be an athlete if he weren't an actor. Superstars bio +1 the personalities he respects from the sports world are those who train when no one is watching, who know the difference between talent and work, between spotlight and repetition. These are figures who, in Gökberk's mind, embody a quiet strength, and that is the kind of personality he strives to mirror. Additionally, Gökberk's favorite personalities are often defined by kindness and simplicity. In interviews, he mentions small moments of grace: the friend who supports silently, the colleague who shows respect without needing praise, the mentor who teaches without showing off. He calls these real people with real lives and says he values them more than any star on a stage. He once shared in a magazine that the greatest compliment he received wasn't from a fan calling him star, but when someone said, "You listened after a conversation." GarderUpMagazine.com. What's remarkable in Gökberk's reflections is how he filters the idea of favorite personalities through his own life journey. Because he didn't start in privilege, he didn't begin in circles of fame. He grew up in Izmit, he moved, he adapted, he watched his parents move cities, adjust, survive. Superstars bio +1 the personalities he picks, therefore, aren't the shiny finish. They're the substance behind the shine. They are people who weather storms, who stay anchored, who choose meaning over applause. That mindset allows him to choose his own favorites not by trend, but by character. In looking at how he talks about people he admires, some patterns emerge. First, resilience. Whether it is grandfather preserving antiques, or an athlete training alone in early morning hours, or a seasoned actor refining his craft over decades, the common trait is persistence. Gökberk's appreciation for resilience reflects his own path, entering acting somewhat by chance. He once said his start was luck or fate, rather than a lifelong plan. GarderUpMagazine.com +1, and then choosing to learn, to grow, to stay grounded rather than simply succeed. The personalities he admires teach him that the journey matters as much as the destination. Second, humility. The personalities he names or refers to aren't always in the limelight. He sees greatness not in flashy announcements, but in quiet delivery. He admires an actor like Hopkins for subtlety, a grandfather for patience, the athlete for consistent training. In interviews, he emphasizes being yourself over performing yourself. He says that the role models he really follows are people who act because they love, not because they must. This informs his own behavior. Fans often describe him as sincere, as someone you feel you could meet in a cafe and talk to like a peer. Third, integrity. Gökberk often talks about being correct, being honest, being true. In one interview, when asked what his life philosophy was, he replied, "Be honest, find the truth, love, value, appreciate." The Style Researcher magazine +1 when you look at favorite personalities through that lens. You see that he values people who live up to what they say. The personalities he admires aren't perfect, they are human, but they stand for something consistent. For Gökberk, that consistency is important because the world of acting often rewards the opposite. Image over substance, popularity over authenticity. His favorite personalities cut through that. Now, how does this preference for such people affect his public persona and personal life? Because when you choose favorites not for fame but for values, your life choices follow. Gökberk's habits, his love of nature, his gym discipline, his grounded lifestyle reflect the same traits he admires: resilience, humility, integrity. The personalities he respects serve as invisible teachers, and he applies their lessons daily. For example, his love for antiques isn't just collecting. It's connecting the story. When he mentions antiques, he says they're like therapy. Film it to him. Objects carry memory, and the personality who cared for those objects carried respect. So his favorites aren't distant. They're alive in his actions. Even the choices of whom to collaborate with, or which projects to say yes to, are informed by who he loves. He has said that he doesn't look for scripts only for fame. He looks for meaning, feeling, growth. The personalities he admires guide this filter. If a role allows him to be honest, empathic, and quietly strong, he leans in. If it demands spectacle over substance, he steps back. That discernment is part of the influence of his favorite personalities. Finally, there's a hopeful note. Gökberk doesn't treat favorite personalities as unreachable icons. He sees them as versions of what he might become. He believes admiration isn't just about looking up, it's about looking forward. One interview line: "Take care of your health. Take care of your family. Be successful. Take care to be correct." The Style Researcher magazine +1 that could stand as the advice of someone who has seen models of character and wants to live them, not just watch them.